Good morning, everyone. We are continuing this week with a talk that started last Sunday, The Breaker of This World's Chain. This is the English translation of Khandana Bhavabandhana that was given by Swami Prabhupanandaji and Christopher Isherwood. They did a very beautiful translation. I mentioned last time that all of our Southern California centers repeat this. We did Trabuco, so I repeated this every day for 16 years. We did it in the evening. Arati here, we simply sing the Bengali / Sanskrit version. It's Bengali, but it's mostly Sanskrit words. So I want to continue. Before we go line by line, I just want to read a little bit. This is another description of how Swamiji came to compose this. You know, he composed the Khandana and also Om Hringritam. These are two of the songs we sing for evening arati when we wave the lights, and then of course the last one to Holy Mother. This is from Chandi. Yeah, Sarva Mangala Mangala. So this I think was from the biography of Swamiji by his Eastern and Western disciples. When Swamiji returned to India after his first visit to the West, the monastery was then at Alambazar, and Shashi Maharaj, Swami Ramakrishnananda, he was the most devoted of all of them with regard to the service of Sri Ramakrishna. During his lifetime and last illness, he served him physically. Day and night he wanted to be by his side. He would do anything for him. And after the passing away of Sri Ramakrishna, he served him through daily puja and cooking the food and doing everything. Tremendous devotion to that type of I don't want to say ritualistic worship, because for Shashi Maharaj it was the living Sri Ramakrishna that he was serving and worshipping. He looked upon him as so alive and real. There's so many stories. When he was in Chennai, he was sent to Madras at that time, and if it was a very hot night or something, he would stay up the whole night waving the fan in front of the picture of Sri Ramakrishna. If there was a leak or something, he would hold the umbrella the whole time, as if Sri Ramakrishna were really alive. He had that feeling, and he would complain to him. Today nobody brought food to offer. You didn't arrange anything for your food and offering. I'll go and I'll get sand from the bank of the ocean, from the beach, and I'll offer that sand to you, and I'll eat that as your prasad. He would say things like that, and believing Thakur is hearing him, and in his case it was true. Then someone would show up with food. There are so many stories like that about Shashi Maharaj. He was a wonderful Swami. In fact, his birthday usually comes in July. I don't know when. Maybe I'll talk about him next month. Yeah, when a very touching scene when the relics of Sri Ramakrishna were interred. Part of them were kept aside, of course, for the monks, but this was in Ramchandra Datta's garden house. And when the first shovelful of dirt was thrown over the relics, and they were in some type of casket, he said, you're hurting him. He really felt that he could feel that, Sri Ramakrishna, and just in the relics. Anyhow, that's Shashi Maharaj. So when Swamiji returned to India after his first visit to the West, the monastery was then at Alambazar, and Shashi Maharaj, Swami Ramakrishnananda, was looking after the seva and puja, etc., of Sri Sri Thakur. Immediately after his return to Calcutta, Swamiji sent Shashi Maharaj to Madras. And this was such a shock to everyone that immediately he agreed, because the same devotion he had to Sri Ramakrishna, he had to Swamiji. Because Thakur told all of them, henceforth I'll live in my disciple. Do you feel what Swamiji says? That will be my will. So he took it that way. Baburam Maharaj, Swami Premananda, succeeded Shashi Maharaj. In the meantime, the monastery was shifted to Nilambar Babu's garden house at Belur. This is the house where Holy Mother stayed also on a couple of occasions. Swamiji also was there at that time. So he had come back from, I think, the first trip, probably, to the west. At Nilambar Babu's house, also a small shrine was set up, and daily worship, etc., of Sri Sri Thakur was conducted as usual. At that time, Swamiji composed the Aratrika song. Aratrika, Arati mean the same thing. Khandana Bhavavandhana, to be sung at the time of Aratrika. But he did not compose the song as we sing now. He composed a few stanzas then, and after every stanza, Namo Namo Prabhu, Vakyamanotita, that line, portion was to be repeated. But the monks and brahmacharyas who were actually singing the song during Aratrika found it difficult to sing the way Swamiji suggested. So after some time, they told Swamiji about their difficulties. In the meantime, the mutt had been shifted to Belur Mutt. At Belur Mutt, Swamiji composed a few more stanzas and added them to the original. And Namo Namo Prabhu portion shifted to just before De 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 Langa. So that is what we do now. This is the story behind the Aratrika song. You know, I prepared this talk a long time ago, and I consulted Swami Premayanandaji about this. This may have been what he wrote to me, actually. I don't have any reference, but anyhow, this is the way it went. So now I'll continue where we left before the next line. Bhanjana dukha ganjana karuna ghana karma kathor. So Bhanjana, he destroys dukha ganjana, he destroys all of our sorrow. How does he do it? He puts it to shame. This is a common theme that we have, that somebody is so beautiful, they put to shame the beauty of even the apsaras and all of that. So by showing that how joyful he is, that joy of his will remove all of our sorrow, that will experience that bliss of the self that he had. Because Thakur, he was always joyful. He always felt the bliss of the Divine Mother within. He said even as a boy, this was just his nature. As a boy, he was always happy, and he only liked to be with the happy people. He would avoid people who were always complaining and unhappy, this and that. So that was his nature. He was a happy pigeon, he used to say. Karuna Ghana, he was the embodiment of compassion. So this we know how there's a tremendous love he had for all of his devotees. We see this in so many ways, how he felt for Swamiji when his father passed away, and Swamiji's whole family was sunk into deep poverty. That he worried so much about that. He has such tremendous compassion. He worried so much about that different devotees who would come who had a little money or some high position, he would say, do something for Narendra, can you do something? And Narendra would get so upset with him. Why do you talk to people about me? And he had a little pride that way, that we're not with our hands out looking for begging for alms from other people. And Thakur said, what can I do? For your sake, I could beg from door to door. Huh? So this compassion really is love. Thakur didn't care for this idea of compassion, this daya. We know that jiva daya, that he said, no, who are we to show compassion on anyone? It's love. Seeing God dwelling within all beings, we feel that joy in serving other people. This is the real meaning of true compassion. Now, at the same time, it says karma kathor, that he was a tremendous worker. We think that he did nothing, that he had to have Swamiji to do everything for him. But there are different ways of doing work. You know, this karmanya karma yapashed, akarmani cha karmacha, that is seeing actionless in action and inaction in action. Swamiji gives a very nice interpretation that there are people who outwardly are not doing anything, but they're the greatest actors in the world, because within that divine presence is being felt, and being spread all over the world, that this is the greatest type of action. So Sri Ramakrishna, he didn't have to do anything, in just his presence. And of course he would spend hours after hours talking to the devotees and talking about his own spiritual experiences and taking on their karma and lifting them up. So that way he was a tremendous actor, performer of action. And he never wasted a single moment. He was very particular about that. Holy Mother even more so. Even more so. That don't waste time. Don't idle your time away. Always be busy doing something. For Sri Ramakrishna, it meant dive deep into spiritual practice. For Holy Mother, it meant both. If you're not doing anything, do something useful with your hands. Pranarpana Jagata Tarana Kurintana Kalidor. Pranarpana. We do arpana, we offer, what do we offer? We offer fruits, we offer sweets, we offer flowers. He offered his whole life, prana. He offered his whole life for the welfare of mankind. That up to the very last second, when he underwent so much pain and suffering, just for the welfare of others. So his whole life was an offering to God and an offering to all of us, an offering to all of humankind. That was his gift to us. Just as we will offer something to God, he offered his whole life to us. Jagata Tarana. Why did he do it? To save the world, to lift the world out of darkness. Not so much this idea of dharma, that there's some moral or ethical purpose or social purpose or anything like that, but he saw everyone suffering from ignorance and lack of faith and devotion, and this was his way of saving, of carrying us to the other side, tarana. And krintana kalidor. Kali means the Kali Yuga, and door is a rope. So he broke that rope of bondage, breaking the bonds of the Kali Yuga, cutting the rope which binds us through ignorance and darkness. We're bound by ourselves. It's not so much that other people are keeping us in bondage. We're bound by our own excessive desires, by our own passions, by our own ego, by our own pride, by our envy, all of these different things. They bind us. How do they bind us? Because we're constantly in a state of seeking something that we don't have. And we're constantly in a state where we can't even make good decisions about things. That it's these passions and these desires that cause us to act in a certain way. We have no freedom that way. Anichanapi, baladivi. So as doing things we don't even want to do, as if we're being forced to do them. That's the type of bondage and there's a Kali Yuga. There are all these different theories about the Yugas. I'll read a little bit about this theory of the Yugas. The important part is not so much how long they last and whether we take it literally or not, but it shows the progression of people in different ages, and goes by this theory of degeneration. Swamiji says in one place that you look at all the religions of the world, they'll all have some idea that things started with some type of perfection. We have Adam and Eve, that perfect innocence, and then some Maya comes, and then things start to degenerate. So we have this idea that in the Satya Yuga or Krita Yuga, this is the first one, this is sometimes called the Golden Age. Each of the yugas it's characterized by a different type of practice. This Satya Yuga is characterized by dhyana, by meditation. So it says in the highest yuga, the great majority of people can experience spirituality by direct intuitive realization of truth. The veil between the material and the transcendent realms becomes almost transparent. According to the Natya Shastra, there are no Natya performances in the Krita Yuga because it is a period free from any kind of unhappiness or misery. Satya Yuga is also called the Golden Age. Now Sri Ramakrishna stresses one thing, that people had tremendous ability to do spiritual practice. These ancient rishis, they could spend hour after hour in deep meditation, and this is how they became perfected souls, this and that, which we can't do now, and which we don't have to do now. Then, Treta Yuga, this is characterized by yajna, so first by dhyana, because they're capable of it. People are capable of it in that yuga. Now, only to do yajna, different types of sacrifice, because the mental concentration isn't there. So you can imagine by the time we get to Kali Yuga, how our hands are tied with regard to spiritual practice. Treta Yuga is the mental age. So the first was a spiritual, this is mental. Mental power is harnessed, and men are in power. They're inventions that dissolve the illusion of time. It says inventions are characteristic of both Dwapara and Treta Yugas. Clairvoyance and telepathy are common skills. Then we get the third, Dwapara Yuga. And the incarnations, Yuga after, so we connect Sri Rama with one and the next with Krishna. And these two yugas, they take thousands and thousands of years. We can't take it too literally, although some people say you add up all the number of years and it kind of makes sense with regard to the creation of the universe even. I don't know. It'll have to be millions and millions of years. Huh? So Dwapara Yuga, here, worship. So we had yajna before, now archana, worship. In the Dwapara Yuga, science flourishes. People experience the spiritual in terms of subtle energies and rational choices. Inventions are abundant, particularly those that dissolve the illusion of distance between people and between things. I don't know where I got this from. And power is mostly in the hands of women. So Treta Yuga was men, huh? And now women. I don't know why. The end of this age, in the descending phase, is associated with the death of Krishna and the events described in the Mahabharata. Now we get to Kali Yuga. This is supposed to be the Kali Yuga. Of course, Swamiji had that belief that with the advent of Sri Ramakrishna, that it was the end of the Kali Yuga and it'll be the beginning of Satya Yuga. Now, what can we do? We can do that meditation, even sacrifice, we can do worship. So, dana, alms, charity. So this is the characteristic of the Kali Yuga. In the lowest epoch, Kali Yuga, most people are aware only of the physical aspects of existence. So Thakur says, Onnogoto Pran. The whole life is given to materialism. It means to food, but food means the body. The Annamaya Kosha is not the sheath of food, but of the physical body. The predominant emphasis of living is material survival, and power is mostly in the hands of men. So why men and women and men? Don't know. Anyhow, this Kali Yuga is characterized by ignorance, tamas, and the inability to practice very intense spiritual disciplines. We find people who do it, of course, but the legendary stories we have of the ancient rishis leaving the ashram early morning and spending a full 24 hours, almost 18 hours or something in meditation without moving, that we don't really have. So this is the negative side. Now Sri Ramakrishna, he emphasizes the positive side, that there's less required of us in the Kali Yuga. Because we can do it, so we don't have to do it. We get a special concession that, so Thakur says, truth alone is the austerity of the present age, he says, the Kali Yuga, that if we practice truthfulness for 12 years without a break, we can realize God. So a very easy thing. We weep a little bit, we can realize God. We don't have to do deep meditation. He says this Naradiya Bhakti is the path in the Kali Yuga, the path of love of God. Now, how do we make? What do we make of this idea that Swamiji says in this birth of Sri Ramakrishna, advent of Sri Ramakrishna, the beginning of the Satya Yuga? I mentioned this last time, I think, Swami Bhuteshanandaji Maharaj, that he said that there's a big transition period, that from one yuga to the next, that there can be tremendous turmoil between this Kali Yuga and this Satya Yuga, between to the next golden age. So we shouldn't be surprised when we see a lot of wars and fighting and different things, and everything is trying to rearrange itself and get settled down. So he gives the example of the mother giving birth to a child. Tremendous birth pangs, giving it. Men could never bear it. The women have a special power of forbearance to be able to give birth to a child, terribly painful labor pains and everything. But then the child is born. So we can look at it that way. Because many people ask, I thought this was supposed to be the Satya Yuga. Look how everybody hates everyone. There's so much fighting and killing. So anyhow, that's one answer that we get. Vanchana kama kanchana. You have renounced kama and kanchana, literally lust and gold. This is a phrase that was changed a little bit. We have a kamini kanchana. That was the phrase that Thakur used. And Swamiji must not have liked it. And he recognized that when Thakur used that term, woman and gold, that he was speaking to women, and this khandana will be speaking to both men and women. And the real meaning was this lustful feeling that men can have towards women, women can have towards men. Of course, it can be between men and women also. We know that. But in any case, he felt that it was better to use this kama kanchana. And all of the direct disciples, we really don't find any of them that I've seen use this kamini kanchana anymore. And I wish Thakur had used this kama kanchana instead of... we always have to explain, and I always feel bad. I can understand why women would feel that Thakur, doesn't he like women? Why is he always talking about that? But he's talking about how presence of the opposite sex, for those in the beginning of spiritual life who have not been grounded in spiritual life, that this can be a great distraction for them. This is all that it means, and that they should be a little conscious of withdrawing themselves from any object of temptation. This was the main meaning for that. We know in Sri Ramakrishna's life how he looked upon all women as manifestations of the Divine Mother, and how he loved to spend time with women. Even as a small boy, he loved to spend time with a Laha family. There were 4 daughters, something like that. Huh? Yeah, he loved their company. They loved him, and they thought of him as one of their own. The sex distinction thing wasn't part of his mind. He didn't really identify himself with anything other than being a child of the Divine Mother. So he could easily be with men or with women. Whenever he visited the devotee's house, he would go to the inner apartments where only the women were there, and he would eat with them and sing for them and tell jokes and everything, and they would be roaring with laughter. There's one nice statement, I think it was I don't remember who it was, Yogin Ma perhaps, where she said, we read nowadays that people say Thakur, he didn't like the company of women. And we think to ourselves, are we not still alive? How that people can say these things. And don't they know how when we were with him, how joyful and how happy he was and everything. And so a lot of this was just to warn the young boys who were going to lead a monastic life that they should be a little cautious about all of these things. But he himself, he did not hesitate to take a woman as his guru, Bhairavi Brahmani. Yeah? And he looked upon, worshipped his wife. Who can do that? And told her that you'll have to do something. I've done a little bit, you'll have to do far more. She said, but I'm only a woman. He said, doesn't matter. I did just a little bit. You'll have to continue. He recognized that she was born to do the same work that he was born to do. And had many women disciples, and Gaurima, how he wanted her to renounce and to start something and to work for regeneration of women and all of these things. we look at the life of Holy Mother and we find that her attitude was exactly the same. She was speaking mostly to women at different times and warning them. And even, it must have been the Sharala to the future Bharati Pranat, where that she said, if God appears before you in the form of a man, even then don't look at his face. So we shouldn't take this to be any sign that Thakur had anything against women. But in any case, it's nice that Swamiji changes it to Kama Kanchana. So he was perfectly free from lust and with gold, of course, we know that he was fanatically free, not only free from attachment, but he just didn't like it. He didn't like money, and he would warn people. You see, in those days, people had to work very, very hard to make a little bit of money to support themselves. There was a bit of slavery to all of it because they were under the British. They would have to really kowtow to their the British masters and work very hard just to make a meager amount of money. So whatever money they got, they could be greatly attached to it, trying to get more money. So Thakur himself, he couldn't touch it. His hand would curl up, and he would feel a tremendous pain in his body. So it was literally true with him. We had one very humorous sadhu many years ago. He said that we're also like Thakur. If somebody puts money in our hands curl up, but then we put it in our pockets. So Thakur, he couldn't touch money. He was perfectly free from lust. Was 100% free from lust. Once in his life, he said, I felt a little bit of lust coming. I said to Mother, if this happens, then I'll cut my throat with a knife, and that was the end of it. So, so for him, it was really nothing. Although he says that a lot of his spiritual practice was to get rid of this feeling that he was a man. Because if he didn't feel that he had a male body, if he didn't identify with that, he couldn't have any lust for a woman. So that was one of the reasons, he says, why he practiced sadhana, taking the attitude of a woman, as a handmaid of the Divine Mother. That was one of the explanations that he gave. So this idea of money, when he heard that any devotees wanted to give him money, then he got completely frightened and everything. And then at one time he was offered a lot of money, and somehow he said, well, you want to really give it to Holy Mother. And then he was really frightened. And when it was offered to Holy Mother, she said, my taking it is as good as his taking it. I can't take it. And he said he was so relieved when Mother reacted that way. Okay, then. Atinindita Indriya Rag. Attachment to sense objects, Indriya Rag. So attachment was Atinindita. He completely looked down upon it. It's something that he felt was one of the greatest obstacles. This idea of raga. We read in Yoga Sutra, Sukha Anushayi, that it's dependent upon the enjoyment. We enjoy something once and we get an attachment to it. So this is the way that attachment becomes stronger and stronger, creates the desire to repeat it and to make it permanent. Then it becomes a klesha, it becomes a source of pain for us. Pain producing obstacle in spiritual life. So Sri Ramakrishna had no attachment to that. Atinindita, he looked upon it as such an insignificant thing. This attachment to possessions, and these are such fleeting things. They don't give us any pleasure at all. He had so many different little experiences. He wanted to try this and to try that. And each time he would say, what does it do? This wonderful sweetmeat. It tastes nice for a few seconds and then it's gone. And to wear this beautiful clothes, nice shawl and everything, it just gives us a little pride, a little rajas. It doesn't help us in God realization. So, he was very, very, one of his great teachings was, don't be attached to the things of the world. They're all fleeting. They're all, he said, like the hog plum. It tastes good, but really there's not much to it. A big stone inside, like a mango with a great big stone. The outside skin is hard, a little bit of something to eat inside the flesh, a little tasty and everything, but it makes you sick. You get colic. There's some stomach problem comes from it. And he says that worldly people, they're like the camel. There's a certain type of tree or bush that has a lot of thorns, but the leaves are tasty. So just to get a few of the leaves, a little tasty part, it eats the whole thing, and its gums bleed from all of the thorns. So this is us. This is why he looked down upon it so much, because there's more suffering that comes with it than that little bit of enjoyment, and it takes the mind away from God. So Thakur always said that the main thing that we do is increase this anuraga. See, raga means passion, and it has a good side and a bad side. So passion and attachment, let it be attachment to God, anuraga. This is the best way to defeat the other. But we have to be cautious that we don't tell ourselves that I can enjoy anything of the world, it won't bother me because I really have attachment to God. This world is too strong for us. We may say the attraction to God is so much stronger than the world, but we're so far away from it, that magnet, that the little magnet attracts us more than the big magnet because we keep company with the little magnet. So we have to change our behavior a little bit and then also try to increase this anuraga, this intense love for God. That comes in the next verse. Huh? Okay, then we get Tyagishwara, He Naravada. Tyagishwara, this means that he's the Lord of those who renounce. A Tyagi can be just in general, somebody who renounces, or specifically a sannyasi. Another word for it is the sannyasi, the Lord of renouncers. So whether it's formal renunciation of the sannyasi or mental renunciation of the householder. But Tyagisha or Tyagishwara also means Shiva. Yeah, Shiva is always considered to be the Lord, the king of the sadhus, the Lord of the renouncers, and on some level, he's kind of the presiding deity of all sadhus. In general, of course, we have our Vaishnava sadhus and everything, but just in general. Because Shiva was perfectly indifferent to everything, to society, to the world in general, just wanted to be lost in meditation, wandering cremation grounds and all of that. So this was really such a strong feature of Thakur's life, renunciation, Tyaga, renunciation, renounce. And the Holy Mother was once asked, what was the message of Sri Ramakrishna, the main message? And she said, everyone likes to say, Jotoma Totopat, the harmony of religions. As many faiths, so many paths to God. But I feel that his real message was renunciation. Have that intense renunciation. That means that care only for God. Don't get too caught up in the world and the enjoyments and pleasures of this world, that you renounce the lower for something higher. That we realize God, we know that what we gave up is a small thing. We'll see this the Gosh Padavari, like the water and the hoof print. We'll get to that verse. And he was also Naravada. So this is the human aspect of Sri Ramakrishna, the greatest among men. So not saying here that God born on earth, but even from this point of view of a man, that he fulfilled all of his obligations, even in the midst of not even knowing if it's day or night, if his cloth is on or is not on. He looked after his mother with great devotion. How many hours and hours he spent with Holy Mother, teaching her everything, even about how to live in the world. All sorts of worldly wisdom he gave her. in addition, of course, to spiritual wisdom. And how he molded all these young boys, and how he founded the Ramakrishna movement, and how we got Swamiji to spread the message throughout the world. These are human traits in the sense of organization, in the sense of attention to detail. Of course, they had that divine element to them. But these are things that would say the greatest among men are like that. They can live very consciously and do things in a very sensible type of way. There was an incident that took place. There were a few different times this happened. I think this may have been with M. I don't remember exactly, but they had a picnic and they were in the Panchavati and it started to rain. Something happened, and Thakur had taken his umbrella and he got back to the room and he said, "Where is my umbrella?" And somebody said maybe, sorry, we forgot to bring it. We left it at Panchavati, something like that. So Thakur said, look at my case. I don't know if my cloth is on or my cloth is not on. I'm so absorbed in God, but I never forget anything. See, so Naravada, even for the way we will judge ordinary people with regard to attention to detail and things like that, even from that point of view, he was head and shoulders above everyone. Deha Pade Anurag. So, what is our prayer to him? This is, I mentioned there's an Anuraga, this intense love. So, it says, please grant us unswerving love, passionate devotion to your lotus feet. That means to you. We talk about Sri Ramakrishna, and we have all of these different aspects. We worship Sri Ramakrishna as that divine presence dwelling within the heart. We worship Sri Ramakrishna as this divine presence that took human form as the avatar. And we worship him just as that sweet-natured, childlike person. This is I always say that it's the personality of these great souls that attracts people. Not the divinity. The divinity, of course, is there. But the way that divinity shines through the personality of Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. It's so beautiful that it's astounding that such sweetness and such sensitivity and such a childlike nature that they had, that this is really what we fall in love with. Not so much that, God in human form came. Oh, good. Everyone is God in human form. But this personality was so sweet and so loving. So, so grant that we feel that connection and that love for your lotus feet. That's simply a way of respectfully saying that we want to love you. That'll be the greatest thing. If we love you, we'll remember you. If we remember you, we'll be transformed. Not so much that you'll like us and do something for us. Then through remembrance, we'll be transformed. So there's Anuraga. This was one of the most important teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, more than Vairagya. Vairagya, of course, don't be attracted by the world, but feel that attraction for God. Increases Anuraga. He always emphasized that positive. Anuraga, it's not ordinary love. It's really this overpowering love for God. A kind of a passionate attachment. The same raga that is the greatest bondage. This attachment to the world, these different types of passions are all ragas. That same thing directed towards God is the catalyst. That's the instrument. That's what carries us to God. That tremendous attachment. And then what happens? We become anuranjita. We become dyed in the color. This raga is such an interesting word. That just as if you have a cloth and you put it in a tub of dye and you pull it out, it comes out that color. And this is that line, Tadbhava Ranjita Akara, about Holy Mother. That she was dyed in the color, in the bhava, in the essence and the mood and the feeling and the love of Sri Ramakrishna. So this is what we try to do. We try to immerse ourselves in that dye. And the cloth of the mind, it should be a little bit clean. And that dye solution should be very strong, and we should leave it there for a long time. Then we pull it out and we'll get a very deep color. I remember when we first took our vows of sannyasa, that we ourselves had to dye the Garba cloth for the first time. Most of us didn't know. I didn't know how to do it. So the other monks, told us how to do it. Now, in those days, it was all this mud. It was mati. It was mud from the banks of the Ganga that was used. Nowadays, you don't get that. It's a very poor quality and not available much. So it's more this permanent dye. But in those days, it comes in powder. It looks just like dirt. You mix it with water and it becomes a type of dye. Now, most of the monks, if you would see them, it would be a nice medium type of color. But we had that fire. We're young monks. First time we're doing it. You see all the monks, the very deep, dark color of orange. We made a very strong solution, and we would keep it there for a long time. So this is what we're trying to do in spiritual life. We want to immerse ourselves in that spiritual dye, become anuranjita, and immerse ourselves and be colored, be transformed into this dye of Sri Ramakrishna. So here we're praying for just a drop of that kind of anuraga, because this is a very powerful thing. This divine love is a very strong solution, and it could completely transform us. So grant me pure love for thy lotus feet. That was the prayer of Sri Ramakrishna. Don't let me be bewitched by thy world bewitching Maya, deluded by that Maya, and grant me pure love, intense love, a love that doesn't care for anything. No selfish motive behind it at all. Shuddha bhakti. Then we add, Nirbhaya, Gata Samshaya, Duradha Nishchaya, Manasavan. What was the nature of his mind? Manasavan. What type of mind did he possess? That was Nirbhaya, absolutely free from fear. Of course, Swamiji, he was the prophet of fearlessness. He loved this more than anything. You read the Upanishads, it's all full of strength and fearlessness. Because what is there to fear if, first of all, we don't see anyone other than ourselves? We see everything as the self within all. We see the Divine Mother everywhere. If we lie in the lap of the Mother, and the Mother is constantly protecting us, and whatever happens is for the best, that she makes if we have that faith, then what is there to fear? Do we fear death? What is death? We go back to Mother if we have that type of faith, so there's nothing to fear. So we're absolutely fearless. We hear different things that the dacoits were coming one time, so Thakur said, I took the name of this god and this and that. This is just in play. But we don't see him ever with any anxiety, any worry, any fear, anything like that. Completely free from that, because everything he relied on Mother, the Divine Mother. So Nirbhaya, Gata Samjaya, free from all doubts. Now, Thakur had a childlike mind. We've seen this, that sometimes somebody would say something to him and he would have a doubt. Oh, is it really so? That Hazra would say something, Narendra would say something. Well, these are all hallucinations, or you're getting too attached to these boys. He said, oh, is it really so? Let me ask Mother. And when he would ask Mother, and Mother spoke to him. We don't know how it happened or how we can explain it, but he would say, yes. Mother said, no, that it's not attachment to these boys because I see God within them. Whatever that doubt was, that it would be dispelled. It wasn't a real doubt. So we have this in the Upanishads. This is one of the signs of God realization, that all of the doubts are destroyed. All of the knots of the heart are untied. All of the doubts are destroyed. Karmas burn up when we have that highest type of realization. So these little, what looks like little doubts and things, This was really just a kind of play. And after he had his vision of the Divine Mother, even before that, but there was no way to doubt the reality of the Divine Mother. He wanted that vision, of course. Then he said, a little doubt came. I didn't have this realization by practicing all of the traditional types of sadhana. Little doubt. Let me do it according to, I had no guru. Let me do it according to some more traditional type of way. Not really a doubt. Not the kind of doubt that we have that drives us mad. Is it really true? I need someone to confirm this to me. He didn't have that type of doubt. Because everything he experienced was direct experience. So gata samshaya, durha nishchaya. So absolutely firm in his conviction, unshakable. And once he decided to do something, you couldn't get him to change his mind. I mean, if he said something, he had to do it. That was his truthfulness also. But if he had a resolve that he'll worship Divine Mother in this particular way, he'll do it. He didn't waver. He didn't come up with excuses for himself. I said it, but I didn't really mean it, or things have changed, this and that. He said, do it. If he said one day, I won't have luchi today, then he got hungry. He said, but what can I do? I said I wouldn't have it, so I didn't have it. So that was the nature of his mind, that if he said something, he would follow it. He used to give the example, there's some I think Hindi expression, there's some expression, Manushar Bhat Hatir Dant, something like that. The words of a man are like the tusks of the elephant. Do you know that expression? Something like that. That means once they come out, they can't go back. You say something, you can't take it back. So even if he said something without meaning it, just a casual type of thing, you say, oh, these words came out of my mouth, I don't know why, but I can't take it back. So, Durha Nishchaya, he started something, he finished it with all of his sadhanas, and most of which he finished in 3 days. So Manasavan, this was the type of mind that he possessed. That mind was Nirbhaya, Gata Samushaya, Durha Nishchaya. It was free from any fear, all of the doubts had been eliminated, and was firm in his conviction. That was the nature of his mind. Nishkarana Bhagada Sharana. He grants refuge to the devotee. Bhagada Sharana, he's the shelter for the refuge. Nishkarana, that means that there's no gain for him. There's no selfish motive. There's a pure unselfish, say, I'm there for you. I don't care if I get anything out of this in return for that. This is that ahetaki bhakti that he used to talk about. This is a characteristic of God and also the real devotee. That we only care to make our beloved happy. We don't care to get anything in return. So this is that ahetaki bhakti. We see in the life of Narendra that how Thakur loved him so much, and how Thakur, whenever he came, he would stroke his body. He would be so thrilled and happy when he was there. But one day Narendra came, and Thakur didn't talk to him. He didn't even look at him. And Narendra, as he came, he sat for a while. He went out. He had a smoke. He talked to Hazra. He went back home. Came back the next day. Same thing happened. Day after day after day. I don't know how long it was, for a month or something like that. And then Thakur said to him, why do you keep coming here? I don't look at you. I don't talk to you. Why do you even come? And he said, I come because I love you. Yes. Thakur was so happy. He said, I was testing you. So for Narendra, not to get anything in return, but because he loved him. So this is that ahetaki bhakti, and this was that nishkarana, without any selfish motive or ulterior motive, that he was the refuge for the devotees. Tyaji jati kulaman. So this means that we all have a little bit of pride. with regard to our birth and our family line and our country and our community, whatever it is. Most people have a little pride, especially in India. The Brahmins were so well thought of. They were really those who were at the top of the ladder in society. Not that they were the wealthiest or the most powerful or anything, but people looked upon them as the keepers of spirituality. So many Brahmins would have tremendous pride because of that. So Thakur, of course, was completely free from that. Renounce all pride of caste and birth. Tyaji jati kulaman. So that was completely, he had no pride with regard to that, no pride with regard to people calling him a divine incarnation, this avatar. He used to laugh. He said, look at this Ram and this Girish. They're calling me an avatar. What does that mean? That one is an actor on the stage, the other is a chemist, the doctor. And that these great pundits years ago said it. That was something. They at least knew a little bit, but they said, it doesn't mean anything. And when they were all talking about these great pundits about Thakur, he sat there indifferently. He said, oh, he says this and he says that. That's interesting. Very, very interesting. Didn't mean anything to him. And if people started praising him and how wonderful he is, he couldn't bear it. He used to say 3 words, I can bear. It pricked my skin like this poisonous fish. There's Guru, Karta, and Baba. And he used to say, I'm nobody's Guru. Divine Mother, Satchidananda alone is the Guru. So he didn't like that feeling. That the Guru means that I am somebody very great and you're somebody below me, you have to serve me, this and that. And Guru, Karta, some type of master. Even the from the point of view of working in an office or something, somebody would be the master, like that. And Baba was generally in the Vaishnava tradition, how they would call the holy man. So he didn't like any of these things. Very humble and simple that way. So he renounced all of the pride of caste and birth. And really he didn't care with regard to others. He didn't care much for this caste distinction. He wasn't like the Brahmos, that he wasn't going to make any big movement for social reform to outlaw caste and everything. But he said the only way to get rid of caste is through love, bhakti, that there's no caste among devotees of God. This wasn't a new thing, Chaitanya Deva. Many of the other Guru Nanak, many of the other great devotional founders of religious movements were very much against the different caste distinctions, because really it goes so much against this idea of seeing the same self dwelling within all beings, this idea of caste. So he didn't hesitate to go to the theater and have these Binodini, these other actresses who were considered to be completely outside of society. Many of them were mistresses, or they were looked upon as prostitutes and everything. He had so much love and affection for them. And the Binodini especially became very saintly, many of them through his touch that way. Now the other way of understanding this is that we have to be Tyaji Jati Kulaman, that it's not very clear the way it's written. Doesn't mean Sri Ramakrishna was like that, but we also have to be like that if we want to have this tremendous love of God. We also have to get beyond this any type of pride that we have. We have the great example of Radha and the gopis, that they gave up all of their pride because they came from good families. They were married women. Not women, they were young girls, but still. And they were sneaking out at night and spending time with Krishna, and all at the expense of their good name. So they didn't care for that, and so they gave up pride and all of that, for the sake of this anuraga. Pride in general is a very toxic thing. I was asked one time, I remember as a young devotee, he said that, in my little group, everyone looks up to me as kind of the leader. I know a little bit more about Thakur, this and that and everything, and I feel a little proud sometimes. So I wrote back a little strongly. I said, look at the lives of these direct disciples that we have, and look at their spiritual stature, and then look at ourselves. We want to get rid of pride. We compare ourselves to these great souls, and we see that we're like little earthworms compared to them. There's a very good way of getting rid of pride. We think that we're great in any field. We look at those who are really great, and then we understand. Now, we're getting a little late, but this is the most important line of the whole thing. This is why I'm giving this talk. Somebody wrote to me about this. Sampada tava shripada bhavagoshpada variyatai. Sampada tava shripada. That your feet, that means you yourself, Sri Ramakrishna. You're the greatest treasure in our lives. This is the greatest sampad, greatest treasure that we can possibly have. And because of that, this world, the bhava, is like the water that fills the hoof print in the clay in the rainy season. Now, there are two meanings to this. One, that water, it's small, it's insignificant. That there's everything else pales in comparison to that treasure, somebody, that treasure. It's like finding a treasure chest with gems and diamonds and pearls and all sorts of things. Everything else seems worthless. This is one of the meaning. The other meaning is that this Gospada is easy to cross. We have a Bhavasagara, right? Bhavasagara, this world is like an ocean. To cross from one side to the other is a very difficult thing. But if it's a Goshpadavari, how easily we can just walk over from one side to the other. So Thakur's lotus feet are that treasure. And when we have that treasure, then this world seems an insignificant thing and very easy for us to go across that. So this was, again, a great teaching of Sri Ramakrishna. Don't keep saying this world is nothing, this world is nothing. Say God is everything. That this is the treasure of my life. That we've come by Thakur's grace, we've come to his feet. That we look upon Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother as the greatest treasure in our lives. And because of that, this world is an insignificant thing. It's not such a source of bondage. It's not that, oh, how can I cross this vast ocean of this world? It's like the water in the little puddle, like that. Parimarpana samadarshana jaga jana dukha jai. So Sri Ramakrishna now is looked upon as this gift of love, parimarpana, that he himself is that offering of love, and he was samadarshana, that he saw same divinity dwelling equally in all. He didn't make any distinction of high and low. I think Hazrat accused him one time that you flatter these people, you like to have these people that have good standing and wealthy. And he said, look at this, how I love this Narendra. He doesn't even have salt to put on his rice. He was so poor at that time. So the samadarshana, this of course, in Gita we find that this is emphasized so much. Seeing the divine within all, that same-sightedness. He used to like to say, Tumi jano or nahi jano, Tumi Ram. Whether you know it or not. All devotees are sitting around in front of him. Kashipur had happened on different occasions. He said, whether you know it or not, I see this and I realize that this God alone is dwelling there. So the same-sightedness, seeing that same reality dwelling within all beings. So, Jaga Jana Dukha Jai. So this devotion of Sri Ramakrishna and love for that ideal that he represents, this looking upon God, realization is the greatest thing in life, that all of that will cause suffering of the world to go away. Jaga Jana, for everyone of the world, not just any individuals, dukkha jai, that this suffering will disappear. So this is the the main portion. We get, I won't go into it too much, but we get to the rest of it, that a different tune and everything changes a little bit. This Namo Namo Prabhu Vakya Manatita Manovachanaikada, that praising to Sri Ramakrishna, that he's beyond mind and speech, and yet that he's the ground, he's that which upholds all mind and speech. And then Jyotira Jyoti Ujjala Haridikandara Tumi Tama Bhanjana Har, light of lights. So the light of lights, now he's identified with that divine consciousness, that light by which everything is illumined, and it lights up the cave of the heart, dwelling within the heart. This is that Ishvara aspect of Sri Ramakrishna. Tumi Tama Bhanjana Har, you destroy all of the darkness. And then we get that final verse. This is how, when we do arati and ringing the bell and hitting the gong and the conch, dhedete langa ranga bhanga baje anga shangamari langa gaiche chanda bhakada vrinda arati tomar. All of the devotees are assembled for arati, all singing your praises through this hymn, to the accompaniment of mridanga and other instruments. Jaya Jaya Arati Tomar, Hara Hara Arati Tomar, Shiva Shiva Arati Tomar. Again, identifying him with Shiva himself. So this is our Khandana Bhavana. I went through the last part a little quickly, but anyhow, it's nice to know when we sing these things, history behind it, the deep significance of it. When Swamiji wrote something, we have to understand that it was with great thought and with great feeling, and there's tremendous significance to each and every word of it. So sometimes it's a very nice practice, I feel, for us to go through these different hymns and appreciate them in a little deeper way. So I will stop here. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Mahakashchitu Kabhag Bhavet. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. May all beings be happy. May all be free from disease. May all realize the highest good. May none suffer. Om Peace, Peace, Peace be unto all.